Why FanDuel Sportsbook is America's #1 sportsbook. They've got great odds in all different types of betting markets with unique and fun bet types like same-game parlays and always-on promotions to let you get more action out of every game day. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and sign up with my promo code Hennig to get in on all the action and your first bet risk-free up to $1,000. That's promo code Hennig with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 to order, play, and present NJRPA. First online real money wager only for risk-free bet. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Restrictions apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
South Jersey's play-by-play home for the Eagles,
touchdown!
Sixers,
and
Flyers.
He scored!
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Now, Sports Bash Saturday. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here, Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN. Live here in the Matt Blatt Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter where you can watch the show right here. Got a busy show. We got to talk some Eagles. We got to talk some Sixers. Also, the state of the Flyers. Kevin Durso joins us coming up at 12:20. I want to get into some hockey talk with Durso because the NHL playoffs start today. The Flyers are not in the playoffs. What is next for them is offseason. You can go check out my article over at 973ESPN.com because I talked to a couple people who are national NHL people, and it seems like a lot of people feel like there's going to be some serious changes with the Flyers. And I'm telling you right now, the Flyers, they were doomed by underachievers and poor defense. Go check it out over 97.3 ESPN.com. Also, we'll get into the Sixers' #1 seed in the Eastern Conference for the first time since the 2000-2001 season. It's a shame Embiid won't win the MVP, but, things happen. We'll talk also UFC 262 tonight. The lightweight championship of the world is on the line. I usually give you my FanDuel Sportsbook picks of the weekend. I'll do that after we have ESPN MMA reporter Brett Okamoto joining us coming up at 1:20 p.m. And, of course, text board is open as always for you to join the conversation, 609-403-0973. If you're listening on 97.3 ESPN FM or the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you can comment right there on the stream. Just right there on the stream, just leave your comment, and we'll get to it throughout the show. I got to start with the Sixers getting the #1 seed, because to me, that's the biggest story coming out of last night. When I look at the 76ers, I realize that it's a controversial topic at times because of how we got here. But if you take away the whole how we got here nonsense, I have to wonder if the players that we are talking about were named different names, would we look at them differently? Because I think that there has been a level of unfair expectations and unrealistic ideas put out there about Embiid and Simmons and Tobias Harris. And a lot of it goes into the fact that people treat players like they do movies. This is what I mean by that. When a player gets drafted or when a guy gets acquired in free agency, what typically happens? We ascribe specific, shall we call it, expectations, beliefs, theories, projections onto them. And then even if those projections, beliefs, theories, expectations don't work out, you tend to look around and be like, oh, well, they're bad. They stink. They're stupid. When is it really the player that's bad, or is it your expectations were wrong? The reason I bring it up to movies is because we've all been there. Doesn't matter what kind of movies you like. You see a trailer, you see a movie preview, you see a big name actor or actress in a film, and you walk into it with specific thoughts and expectations and hopes. And then when the movie doesn't play up to your thoughts, hopes, and expectations, you get mad. You're disappointed. You feel let down. It's not that the movie was bad, it's that your expectations were wrong. So when it comes to Embiid and Simmons and Tobias Harris, I don't think that we appreciate what they bring to the table enough. Ben Simmons is a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. And I understand that he doesn't shoot the ball enough. He doesn't do a lot of different things enough. But the only reason why you have a problem with that is because of the fact that he isn't what you expected him to be. It's not that Ben Simmons is a bad player. It's not that he stinks. It's not that he's a bum. It's that he doesn't fit into the pre-ascribed, the pre-projection when he was drafted, before he ever got on the court. Now, it doesn't help that Simmons missed a year of basketball. Joel Embiid missed 2 years of basketball. I think that is part of the frustration that people have with them, is that those two players missed time with injuries. But at the end of the day, those players are both all-stars. Embiid's a superstar. Let's not get it twisted. There's 5 players in the NBA who you would even only consider taking ahead of him in a draft to start your team. There's no more than 5. It's probably less than 5, but I'm going to give you 5, okay? Because I understand a lot of people, they would go with LeBron, they would go with Luka, they would go with a few other players. Maybe they throw in Anthony Davis, maybe they throw in Durant, maybe they throw in James Harden, maybe they throw in Steph. But outside of those guys, there's nobody else in the league that you're starting a team with an Embiid. So you have a team that has a cornerstone piece. You have a guy who's arguably the Defensive Player of the Year, which the only reason why he won't win it is because, these analytics just dodo birds, okay, who sit there and act like that their opinion matters only because they can vote, because they have this elitist mentality who think that blocking shots is more important than stopping perimeter players in a league where everyone is shooting from the perimeter. But I'm worried about a shot blocker in the paint. Rudy Gobert's overrated. Anyway, so you have a potential Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Then you have Tobias Harris, whose team has almost 80% win percentage when he gets at least 20 points and 6 rebounds a game. Almost 80% win percentage when he gets 20 and 6. How many of the guys in the league actually get 20 and 6 consistently? It's not a ton. And how many of those teams win as many games as the Sixers do when that guy gets it? It's more like 500 for those guys. Julius Randle's a nice player. He's a very good player, but come on. Who's a better player, Tobias Harris or Julius Randle? I think it's Tobias. I think we all know that. And by the way, is Julius Randle as good of a player as he is? Doesn't play for Tom Thibodeau this year? Tom Thibodeau might be Coach of the Year. I mean, that dude took a group of misfit toys and made them into a playoff team. Holy Toledo. By the way, whoever plays the Knicks in the postseason, just take the under in every game, because let's be realistic. The Knicks play really tough defense. They're going to make somebody work for a playoff series. And if you got a team like the Knicks and the Sixers in a postseason series, or the Knicks and the Heat, it's going to be like 90-85 every game. It's going to be ridiculous. So there's a little tip for you over the top here. Josh Hennig here, Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN. And so when you think about the Sixers, I don't think that we give them enough credit for where they are right now. And then when you look at what their path to the conference finals is, it's a lot easier now they have the number 1 seed. The Sixers are 11-1 this year against the 4 teams that they would play in the 8th seed who are in the playoff tournament: the Celtics, the Hornets, the Pacers, and the Wizards. They're 11-1 against those teams. And I think they could beat any of those teams. I don't know if it's 5 or 6 games, depending on which team it is. There are little variables here and there. I think the Pacers could take them 6 games. I think the Celtics would be a 5-game win. I think the Hornets would be a 5-gamer. I think the Wizards might be a 5 or 6. But they're going to win that first round game, which brings you to the second round. Now, you don't have to play the Bucks. You don't have to play the Nets in the second round. you at least avoid that roadblock. So then it probably comes down to you're playing either the Hawks or the Heat. And I think everyone would agree you'd rather face the Hawks than the Heat at this point. Because the Heat have that Jimmy Butler factor. Bam Adebayo is a phenomenal athlete. He'll make Embiid work on both ends of the court. That would be a 6-7 game series. But the Hawks, the 5-6 game series. So the path is there for the Sixers to get to the conference finals. And they're going to do it with a superstar in Joel Embiid, a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year in Ben Simmons, a guy who should have been an all-star in Tobias Harris, Dwight Howard putting excellent contributions off the bench in terms of defense and rebounding, Shake Milton, George Hill with their contributions from the perimeter off the bench. And if Seth Curry and Danny Green get hot for a series, you're probably going to win that series in 5 games. So all you got to worry about when you get to the conference finals is the Nets and the Bucks. And both of them have 2 very eye-popping questions. The Nets' problem is, can they stay healthy? It seems like every time one guy comes back, another guy gets injured. And what is their cohesiveness? Are they going to be a cohesive unit by the time you play them, or are they still going to be disjointed? If you play the Bucks have never gotten past the conference finals. Giannis has yet to prove that he can elevate his team into the NBA finals, even though he's a 2-time league MVP. You would argue that he has a better team this year with Drew Holiday and company around him than in past years, but is that still good enough to be the Sixers? I don't know, but I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. 609-403-0973 is the text. We're listening to 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you can comment on the stream. If you want to join the conversation, just follow 97.3 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We will be getting to the Flyers a little bit later in the show. Around 12:20 today, we'll be joined by Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider, for a State of the Flyers. Also, your thoughts on the Sixers and the Eagles as well. We'll get to them a little bit later as well. Really quick, day 2 of rookie mini camps is today. Nick Sirianni said some very interesting things yesterday. I brought this up yesterday on game night on 97.3 ESPN about how I look at Sirianni, and when he talks about how they're going to focus on the fundamentals, how they're going to focus on different things, it's definitely a contrast from Doug Peterson. It's a strong contrast from Doug Peterson. So we'll get to more of the Eagles a little bit later in the hour. But I want to wrap up the NBA conversation by saying this. When you look around the NBA, when you look at the other teams in the Eastern Conference, there's really only 3 teams that go to the NBA Finals in the Eastern Conference. It's the Nets, it's the Bucks, and it's the Sixers. In the Western Conference, it's a little bit more of a mess because you know the Lakers are going to have LeBron, but the Clippers have Kawhi and a revitalized Clippers team. You know the Nuggets have the potential fraudulent MVP in Nikola Jokic, although he probably won't get to the NBA Finals because, again, he's a bit of a paper league MVP. And then you got the Jazz and the Suns. I think the Suns are dangerous, man. I think the Suns with Chris Paul, Devin Booker, they're going to be really, really good. For the Sixers, I think the Sixers have a very interesting road if they want to get to the NBA Finals. And the last time they got to the NBA Finals was the last time they had the number 1 seed. So how does that factor in? Well, home court advantage. You're going to have at least 50% capacity for the first couple rounds. If you get to the conference finals or the NBA Finals, you could have full capacity by then. I think the Sixers' home crowd are going to have a huge impact on this series. Any series. You could almost pencil in those wins when they're at home. And I think that's a big part of the Sixers as well, making it to the conference finals. Getting number 1 seed was more than just avoiding the Bucks and the Nets in the second round. It was about getting that home court advantage. And we know how the Sixers team feeds off of the home court, feeds off of the home fans. It's a big, big deal for them. So all the signs are pointing to Sixers getting to at least the conference finals and having a chance to maybe get to the NBA Finals. Now, the question is, how many games does it take for them to get there? What? 12 games? Is it 14 games to get to the conference finals? Is it 11 games? I think also you got to watch out for this long layoff in between the end of the regular season, which is tomorrow for the Sixers, and the start of the playoffs, which is Saturday. That's probably going to be the longest layoff that they've had. That's not either the NBA All-Star break or due to COVID protocols they've had all year. How they handle that is going to be a big part of the conversation as well. Not just them, but everybody. How do all these teams handle that much time off when they haven't had that much time off in forever? Definitely something to think about. There's a lot of things to discuss. There's a lot of things to chew on. Of course, we will do it all right here on 97.3 ESPN all week long, all weekend long. And of course, tomorrow, Billy Schwein in the locker room, 10 a.m. to noon. Mike Gill in Sports Bash, 2 to 6 on Monday. I'll be back on for game night at 6 p.m. on Monday on 97.3 ESPN and 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Did you know the 97.3 ESPN mobile app is free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City? You could download the app and customize your alerts now. See when Eagles, Sixers, Phillies, Flyers, South Jersey High School sports, you can customize all your alerts right there with the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, and it's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Sports Bash Saturday here on 97.3 ESPN being brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan is open on the Black Horse Pike in EHT next to Home Depot. Visit them online at mattblattnissan.com. All right, we're going to touch on almost all the Philly teams today. We're going to touch on the Flyers coming up next. Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider for 97.3 ESPN.com. His thoughts on the Flyers, the NHL playoffs, the NHL offseason, and more right here with yours truly, Josh Hennig, on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN FM.
It's Sixers basketball tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
And he jammed it! A block at one end, a Euro step, and a slam at the other.
The Sixers host the Orlando Magic tomorrow. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN.
Are ants, wasps, mice, or mosquitoes bugging you? Viking Pest Control can protect your home or business this spring. For a limited time, new customers save $50 on any service. Get a fast, free quote at VikingPest.com.
It's spring sale time at Rossi Honda. Lease a new 2021 HR-V LX for only $129 a month. Drive a new CR-V EX for $239 a month, or a 21 Pilot all-wheel drive for only $279. With oil changes included. At Rossi Honda, we treat you better, period, on Delsey Drive in Vineland. Shop us 24/7 at RossiHonda.com.
$32.95 down plus tax and tags. 36-month lease, 10,000 miles per year to qualified buyers. See dealer for details. Purchasing a vehicle has always been exciting. For some, it's a necessity. For others, it's a treat. As the state starts to reopen and more restrictions get lifted, the more freedom you have to get out and about. And the more you're out and about, the more peace of mind you'll need for feeling safe and protected. If you're in need of a new car, you need to have peace of mind that the dealership is keeping your health and safety as their number one priority. And that's exactly what you'll find at Rossi Honda on Delsey Drive in Vineland. Your peace of mind is their peace of mind.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
I love my Charmin Super Mega Golden Rolls, yeah. Gold last long, it's TP Gold, yeah. Charmin's got 6 rolls in one, lasts forever on my buns. Only Super Mega when I'm cleaning. Charmin's got my booty believing.
Charmin Super Mega Roll is 6 regular rolls in one. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
PropSwap is the #1 app to buy and sell sports bets. Derek from Galloway made $800 cash just from buying and selling sports bets on PropSwap. Basketball, baseball, hockey. Just buy a future bet, hold it for a few weeks, then sell it for big profit. And if you're a buyer looking for better odds than what a sports book can offer, there's never been a better time to join PropSwap. As new users right now, get a free $100 match bonus. But hurry, the offer expires soon. Check out PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today.
Want the truth on why I wake up looking so darn awesome? I take care of my skin. Not just my face, but more intimate skin. And when you've got incontinence, you sure need to.
Tena Intimates pads lock liquid in and are now 100% breathable to care for your intimate skin, day or night. Tena Intimates are now endorsed by the Skin Health Alliance. Visit TennaSample.com for your free sample. Kind to skin, protects like Tenna.
If you own a small business, you know how hard it can be to find new customers. Now, Town Square Media has new tools that can help your business stand out and grow. Go to GetLocalCustomersNow.com for a free competitive analysis that will show you what other businesses are doing to find new customers and how you can do it too with Town Square Media. Be one of the first business owners to sign up and receive $500 in free advertising on this station. Start growing your business today. Visit GetLocalCustomersNow.com. That's GetLocalCustomersNow.com.
When it comes to wings in the Delaware Valley, nobody beats the Piccalilli Inn. Enjoy ice-cold beer and their world-famous wings, tails, or ears on the Pick patio. Try new flavors like garlic parmesan, Jim Beam maple, or smoker. You'll see why people drive from all over for the Picks. World-famous wings and home-style favorites. Whether you're headed to or from the shore, for eat-in or take-out, make tonight the night. You visit the one, the only, the original Piccalilli Inn, Route 206, Chemung, New Jersey. For live music and specials, like them on Facebook.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Sports Bash Saturday. Take a break from the Sixers conversation right now. Get into the Sixers. What does the offseason hold for them? Stanley Cup Finals also start today. So joining us right now on the Boardwalk had a hotline to get all of that and more is our Flyers insider from 97.3 ESPN.com, Kevin Durso. He joins us right now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So, one of the things I'm thinking about with the Flyers at the end of the season is I look around the NHL right now. You got all these teams getting ready to play. The Flyers are not one of those teams, which in and of itself is disappointing. But also the other side of it, Kevin, is this offseason is going to consider a lot of decisions, a lot of changes, a lot of things that have to be made. And some of those decisions are going to be made, and they're not going to be popular with a lot of people, but they're going to have to be made to get the job done for this team to move forward.
Yeah, for sure. You've got to consider everything this offseason, and you've got to make sure that it's proven that it was unacceptable what happened from all accounts. So everybody's really on the hot seat at this point. I mean, even down to general manager Chuck Fletcher, you've got to be prepared to go and do the work to make this team better and to get this team back to the relevance that it needs to be, that everybody expects it to be. And I think everybody thought they were turning that corner after the playoffs a year ago and had everything starting to fall into place. And Chuck Fletcher gave an interview, had some comments on the Athletic with Pierre LeBrun and talked about how, they maybe relied on the young kids too much and they didn't do a good enough job of filling the void that Matt Niskanen left defensively and guys like that. So you really have to go and make sure you get this one right, because I think everybody is going to be on the line this season if you don't get it right. Now, part of getting it right is they have to make some changes. We know that it's not going to be easy because of certain guys' contracts. Obviously, guys like Drew have no movement clause. What do you think is the most reasonable, logical changes that can be made for this team? It's really hard to say that anything's going to be completely logical, to be honest, because it requires a lot of creativity on the part of Chuck Fletcher to figure out who you can move, who's available, and who other teams may want from the current roster to make it happen, organizing through that cap space that they have, which is very limited. I think reasonably you need to just start to set expectations on what you think needs to get done and go from there. So I've said it for a few weeks now. My top priority is get a top pairing defenseman who can play alongside Ivan Provorov. That's number one. You definitely need to get, and not that Brian Elliott was a problem this season per se, but you need a more viable backup option so that this way, if Carter Hart has struggles, if Carter Hart is getting used too much and can't escape the constant struggles that may come to a young goaltender, you have a guy who actually can play 3 or 4 games in a row for you. And Brian Elliott at this stage of his career needs the amount of time in between games to really be the best he can be. So I see that being something that needs to be done. And then at forward, you just need to make sure you have the best 12 guys you can and see what you can improve in certain ways. I think you were very underwhelmed with what you got from your centers this year. I think you were very underwhelmed with a lot of the consistency in scoring with the overall team defense. I think that collectively is the biggest thing. So I would say those areas are the ones to address, and how they go about addressing it is really the key, because you need to think about everybody at this point. I think that, yes, you can look at Claude Drew and you can look at Kevin Hayes, guys like that who have no movement clauses, or guys who have had success for your team that you think you can build around. And I still think Carter Hart's that guy. I'd still say Ivan Provorov's that guy. I think Joel Farabee's coming to that conversation. Those are maybe your untouchables, but the rest of it, I think you leave everything on the table to make it happen.
Kevin Durso joining us here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. Follow on Twitter, Kevin_Durso, for your Flyers and NHL coverage. Flyers season is done. What is next for the team? We're talking about it right now here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Kevin, you mentioned the top pairing for the defenseman, but I ask you, what is the best way to get that player? Because we know they have certain financial limitations. So is that a free agent signing? Is that a trade? What do you think is the best way for the Flyers to go about doing that, considering the limitations they do have?
Well, to get the guy, any avenue to get him is suitable at this point. You can do it through free agency. You can do it through a trade. You still are going to have to take care of something when it comes to your own cap. Expansion draft is so important. You're going to lose a contract somewhere there. I think, the worst case scenario for the Flyers is that if Seattle looks around and basically takes a guy.
All right, I think Kevin Durso just hit a dead zone spot there, so we're going to try to get him back on the phone line. His phone just dropped all of a sudden there, so we'll get Kevin Durso back on here. We were just listening to him making a point about having to make a move, and then, well, boom, he was gone. So we'll try to get him back on here on Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN FM. Josh Hennig hanging out with you. We'll see if we can get Durso punched up back on the line. The joys of live radio. You never know if someone is going to be there or not. We'll try punching Kevin back up. Kevin, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I figured you just went through a dead zone or something because you were there and you were gone.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember exactly where I left off, but I was talking about moving guys who you may have had ties to for a while. So
yes.
I think they really want to unload a contract like Shane Gostisbehere or James Ariensdijk or Jake Voracek. I think those are the three names that I think you're going to hear a lot about, that if they moved on from those guys, they wouldn't be heartbroken about it. I think a lot of the fan base wouldn't either, because that spells significance to people. I think that really spells something that indicates true change at this point. So I think that's where we're at this point, is trying to see if we can go from there. I mean, if you trade one of those guys to get the defensive replacement, great. If you make a trade with one of those guys to open up the money to then make another trade, that works. And, a free agent that's hanging around that I think people will be interested in is Dougie Hamilton from Carolina. I think that would be a name that if he's available and you can create the money and the cap space to actually make it happen, go out there and try for it, because that's the kind of name you're going to need, who can handle the minutes, who can handle the workload to play alongside Ivan Provorov and be that guy.
Kevin, a name that's been brought up a lot over the last couple of years in connection with the Flyers, but it's not on the Flyers, because we know hockey fans, they love to talk about what ifs, right? And that is Johnny Gaudreau. Now, when I had Scott Laughlin on my show on Monday, he expects that Johnny Gaudreau to be gone from Calgary this offseason. Are the Flyers a legit destination for Gaudreau, or do you think he would end up elsewhere if he's no longer in Calgary?
I think it's definitely a legitimate destination for him if he leaves Calgary, and no matter how it happens, I think that there could be a way for them to work something out through a trade, or there could be a way for them to get him in free agency once he becomes a free agent next season. To me, it's a matter of kind of when Calgary decides to pull the trigger on this, so to speak. And I definitely do get that sense from Calgary. I think Scott's absolutely right about that. When I watched Calgary this year, I felt like I was just watching an extension of the Flyers, so to speak. It's a team that has had a lot of the same core, has a lot of the same needs, and really just needs to maybe shake things up and start over to an extent. Not completely start over, but needs to move some pieces that kind of indicate that change is actually going to happen. So to me, he's one of the pieces that I think absolutely would be in play. And if that's the case, I wouldn't be surprised if the Flyers are interested for bringing a local kid home who would want to be there, but also for a guy who does add that scoring touch and can be a goal scoring threat at just about any point in any game. So I think that there's definitely a fit. It's just a matter of how they make that work out immediately and when Calgary decides in the same vein, when they decide it's time to make a decision like that as well.
Is also part of the potential appeal of him is also his age. I know in the past, the Flyers, when they've gone after big names, they've been guys who tend to be 30 and up, right? You know, when they got guys like Ronick and Premu and guys, they were more near the back end of their career than the front end of the career. How appealing is it potentially to say, hey, we're more willing to give up what's necessary to get a guy because we know that he's on the right side of 30?
Yeah, that would be pretty big, and I think that would help too because it kind of establishes you getting a guy for the long haul down the stretch of his career and someone who's already established. I think that that's part of, I don't want to call it the problem, but I think the mindset that the Flyers have had of late is about letting the kids develop. And when Chuck Fletcher sits there and says, well, maybe we expected too much out of the young players this season for them to make too big of a jump to step into the roles that we needed to fill. And when you think about that, it's like, you know, wouldn't you rather, every team would rather have the established guy who's ready to go from, you know, and not only ready to go, but who's in that spot already where you kind of know what to expect. I think people are tired of knowing what to expect from Claude Giroux, Jake Voracek, James Van Riemsdyk, Sean Couturier, et cetera, when they've been around for so long and there's really no change to that group. And it's about waiting for the next guy who joins that group, the next young guy to come in and become part of that. I think that really if you've got an established player who's a top free agent, who's a top trade target, who's in the prime of his career, just entering it, and kind of is an indication that you're ready to go at the same time that they are in their career, it would really change things. I think it would be a draw for people. I don't know that there's a player right now that people get crazy excited to go see, maybe with the exception of Carter Hart, who you go, that's a guy I have to go see who hasn't been here before, who's a new guy who I really want to see, who's a draw for tickets at this point. And I think that a guy like Johnny Gaudreau would do it. A guy like, you know, or just other guys out there who are in that age range, I would say, would do it. And if you can get a guy in his prime who is ready to go and ready to fill that void of being a goal producer or a big point producing guy or even that top defenseman, I think that would do a lot for this team.
Kevin, what about the coaching situation and its future? I know you mentioned earlier this is going to be a hot seat season for Chuck Fletcher and everybody in the organization, but what do you think the short and long-term future is for Alain Vigneault? Because it seems like this was a very un-Alain Vigneault type team that we saw out there on the ice, and part of that might be because of the COVID protocols and a lack of practice and all that stuff, but what do you think his future is?
Well, he's definitely short-term, he's back. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be. The only reason he wouldn't be back is if somehow or other he has a change of heart and decides he doesn't want to do this. And he kind of danced around that question a little bit because he said he wants to take a step back and evaluate the season as a whole, not make any rash judgments based off of emotion. But toward the end of the press conference kind of gave that final indication. Yes, I will. I still want to win a Stanley Cup, and I still think I can do it here. And that kind of is an indication he'll be back. And Chuck Fletcher has said the entire coaching staff is returning. So I don't expect any changes short term. But I do think that much like Chuck Fletcher, much like any player on this team, if you were part of this season that just happened and you're part of it moving forward, then you're on notice going into next season. And you're going to have to perform and produce and win games to show that this is going somewhere. Because I really just don't get the sense that that anybody is safe long term at this point. Everybody's on watch. Everybody's got to really put their best foot forward starting next season. And so that goes for the head coach as well. I think Alain Vigneault, for all the success he's had over his career and for all of the things that he's done and can do for this team with his experience and with his winning history and all of that, you've got to win to stay with a franchise for the long haul. And I think that really becomes imperative this upcoming season.
Kevin Durso joining us here on Game Night on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. You being on the phone is throwing me off here a little bit, Kevin. So it's actually a bad job by me. No, but seriously, Kevin Durso here at Kevin_Durso on Twitter, covering the Flyers and the NHL, the Open Ice Hits podcast. You and Broads host that, and you guys did a nice little preview for the NHL playoffs. I got a couple questions off of the podcast to ask you about the playoffs. Number one, when I look at the Florida matchup between the Panthers and the Lightning, I feel like people don't realize how good the Panthers are unless they've watched like a lot of Panthers hockey this year. And I have to wonder if the Panthers can get past the Lightning, which is going to be a huge task in and of itself because Stamkos and Kucherov are supposed to come back. Could the Panthers be a dark horse for the Stanley Cup this year?
They could, sure. I don't know that I have them going that far. I think that division is, and Rhodes and I have talked about it before on a previous episode, that division has a lot of good teams in it. I mean, realistically, when you think about how the Central had the defending, technically Western Conference champions, there's not really an East and West this year, but they had the defending Western Conference champions in the Dallas Stars in that division. And Dallas, because of maybe their COVID pause at the very beginning of the season and everything like that, they didn't really get off to a strong start. They kind of struggled to stay in there. They were possibly going to be in the playoffs, and then Nashville got on a roll and managed to make that final playoff spot. I'd be really curious. I think Nashville's actually even more of a dark horse in that division, in that scenario, just because I really think nobody's giving them a shot against Carolina, and I think that's a tougher series than people think. I really do, and I don't know if it's going to amount to Nashville winning the series. I still think Carolina is probably the team to beat out of that division, but nonetheless, I think that Florida is going to have a tough enough matchup against Tampa Bay, then to go against a team that's either really rolling like Nashville would be to get past Carolina, or Carolina just being as good of a team as they are that was in contention for the President's Trophy right up until the final weekend. So I don't know that they're a cup contender. I think that they can be a dark horse if they start to put it together, if they can win a series, and you have to give them some consideration. But I still think I would put Carolina and Tampa ahead of them.
Let's jump over to the West. I understand Colorado has had an incredible season, but to me, if I'm a team out there, I don't want to see Vegas. I want to see the Golden Knights, because I feel like if those two goaltenders get hot at any point in time, it's just game over for any series.
Yeah, it really could be, and it's interesting. I plan to tweet out my first round predictions later this evening, right before the game actually starts tonight, the first playoff game. But I really don't overlook Minnesota that much completely. You know, I really think that biggest Minnesota series is going to be a long one. I think Minnesota doesn't get enough credit for how good they've played this season. And I think that they are a better team than a lot of people give them credit for. That's kind of maybe the opposite of what I was saying about Florida, where I think people really overlook Minnesota. And I know that we all, and I'm not denying this, we all want the Colorado-Vegas second-round matchup. We all want to see it. It would be probably the two best teams collectively in the league. If it could have been the Stanley Cup final, I think we would have taken it. But it's not going to be, obviously. And we want to see those two teams match up against each other. And I think Minnesota's got something to say about that. I don't really feel like St. Louis is going to be as much of a challenge for Colorado. But I do think Minnesota is going to be a little bit of a challenge. And it will come down to how well Vegas's goaltending plays, how well they play defensively, because I do think that they are the better all-around team. And if we could get two teams like Colorado and Vegas playing each other in the second round, which I think is probably two of the most well-rounded teams you're going to find in the NHL right now, it would be outstanding to watch.
The four teams that came out of the East, you have Boston, you have the Islanders, you have the Penguins, you have the Caps. I feel like all four of them have these like innate strengths and these innate weaknesses. So which of those four teams do you have whose weakness can be minimalized the most and whose strength is just way better than the other three, in your opinion?
You know, I really like Boston out of this division, and it comes down to I don't see as much of a question for them or weakness for them as the other three. I wonder if Washington's healthy enough, if they're basically new goaltending, because these two goaltenders they have never played in a playoff series before. Are they going to be good enough, and are they healthy enough to make up for it in a series against Boston? Pittsburgh, I do see getting past the first round, but I wonder as it gets longer and deeper into the playoffs, is Tristan Jarry their new Matt Murray and their new Marc-Andre Fleury, who would be able to carry them through playoff series? I just don't know if I've seen it yet. So he really has a lot to prove, because I think that Pittsburgh's got the scoring. They've made the trade deadline acquisitions that make them dangerous, but it's going to be, can their goaltending do it? And then the Islanders haven't really gotten much out of their trade deadline acquisitions and kind of weren't trending in that right direction going into the playoffs. We all knew they were going to be a playoff team down the stretch, but for them to be fourth really says a lot when I think about where they were a month ago, and they were challenging for the division lead regularly, and now they're the 4 seed. So I think that all of those teams have a question. I think Boston is the one that I don't ask as many questions about, and I think Boston also probably made the biggest game-changing trade acquisition with Taylor Hall. I really think that makes them even more dangerous, because now I don't view them as a one-line team anymore, where if Bergeron, Pasternak, and Marchand aren't going, then it's trouble for them to score. I think they actually have some scoring depth now that can enhance them with Taylor Hall. It's brought some good out of David Krejci. Maybe it can bring more out of Charlie Coyle and Jake DeBrusk and can really enhance them, because everything else about them to me is not much of a question. I like their goaltending. I like their young defensive core that seems to have stepped up in the right way. I like just about everything about them.
Kevin, one more before I let you go. Up north, the Canadian division, I'm less interested about who's going to win the division, because I feel like to me it comes down to either Toronto or Edmonton for me. But how is it going to work? This whole situation with this stalemate between the NHL and Canada is still going on, and are we just going to end up having whoever wins that division and goes to the Final Four for the Cup Finals just have to take a temporary residency in the United States, or is Canada finally going to loosen up some of these border issues?
I don't know about the border issues. I wouldn't bank on it. So I think you're going to see, unfortunately, probably see a neutral site, which would be disappointing. I mean, you already touched on it with the two teams that probably are going to make it out of that first round, at least in my opinion. And we almost don't even talk about that matchup anymore as two teams. We talk about it as two individuals because they're two of the most prolific young athletes we've got in the sport right now. And if you can get the Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews matchup, it's absolutely huge to me for viewership and getting people to know who these two guys are from north of the border, who play north of the border, who have so much talent. And I know I can't wait to see it. What happens beyond that second round really is a mystery, because, yeah, you're going to have to start to think about those logistics and who do they play and how do they play against the team from the U.S. and what do you do with them for however long it takes to complete the rest of the playoffs. So, yeah, that's the interesting part. But, man, I can't wait to see if that's a series we really get. And certainly Montreal and Winnipeg could try to ruin that for everybody and take that matchup away. But if we get that matchup, it's going to be so exciting. It's going to be must-see television every single night.
He's Kevin Durso at Kevin_Durso on Twitter for all your Flyers and NHL coverage. Also, the Open Ice Hits. This is the podcast. And as all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Kevin, appreciate you jumping on a Saturday, and safe travels wherever the heck you're going.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Guess it was another blame Durso moment.
Right. Well. Can we really blame you because I won my fantasy hockey league? Is that really a blame Durso moment?
No, I don't know if that is. I don't steer people wrong when it comes to my hockey analysis, for sure. I don't steer people wrong. So it was just funny that you used that, because I was talking to some friends about that. It took us right back to our college days.
Good stuff. Kevin, have a good weekend, my friend.
You too, Josh. Take care.
Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. And of course, our conversation with Kevin Durso is on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Got a couple texts that came in. I'll get to your thoughts on the other side. 609-403-0973. So I'll get to you my thoughts on the Eagles at rookie minicamps and their offseason. Some interesting points I picked up from what Nick Sirianni said at his first presser of Eagles rookie minicamp. Plus, UFC 262 is tonight. Brett Okamoto, ESPN MMA reporter, will join me coming up at 1:20 tonight. The lightweight championship of the world is on the line, and the future of the 155-pound division is on the line as well. You could see an entire change of the trajectory of the entire weight class change hands tonight. So we got that. We got Sixers. We got Eagles. We got a lot to get to right here. Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN with yours truly, Josh Hennig, at Josh Hennig on Twitter. And we are live in the Matt Blatt Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN FM and 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
This weekend on Major League Baseball on ESPN Radio.
Ground ball hit to third, knocked down by Arenado, stands up, recovers, throws to first in time. What a play!
The National League Central leading St. Louis Cardinals head to San Diego to face the Padres.
Swing and a fly ball crushed to right field. A game-tying solo home run for Eric Hosmer.
Listen to Major League Baseball tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 8 p.m.
On some models excludes score bet with GM financing. Excludes prior sale. See dealer for details.
Many car dealers all around the area are having trouble getting inventory, so they're jacking up prices big time. But at Bennett Chevy, we haven't changed a thing. Why would we? You said you love our GM supplier employee pricing. You pay what our supplier employees pay, not a penny more. Bennett also gives you all the rebates, which can add up to a whopping 25% off MSRP. Plus, Bennett's got available 0% financing that'll save you thousands more. Looking for used? Good news. Bennett's still paying a minimum $7,000 for any trade you bring us, regardless of condition or miles. Any old Heath is worth a minimum $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock. And our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend, so there's no pressure ever. And Bennett Chevy is now an authorized lease return center for all brands. So now more than ever, there's just no beating Bennett. Find new roads at Bennett Chevrolet, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
When you support your local small businesses, it helps keep your neighbors employed, helps kids save for college, and strengthens your community. And Town Square Media South Jersey puts local businesses in the spotlight.
First Bank of Sea Isle City, Cape May County's community bank.
Dr. Lyle M. Back for everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery. Go to ilovelylback.com.
Egg Harbor Independent Branch Leader at Charles Schwab in the Consumer Square Shopping Plaza.
Filling Marble and Tile Outlet, Philadelphia Avenue and Route 30 in Egg Harbor City. Visit fillingmarble.com.
Intuitive Women's Health in Summers Point, accepting new patients. Schedule an appointment today online at intuitivewomenshealth.net.
East Coast Roofing, Siding and Windows services all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up. Call East Coast today at 609-646-1444. Online at eastcoastroofing.com.
Thank you for supporting your local businesses. From Town Square Media, South Jersey.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here, Sports Bash Saturday, 973 ESPN. Get your thoughts coming up here, 609-403-0973. We'll be getting into more of the Eagles and the NFL coming up next hour, as well as UFC 262 and my FanDuel Sportsbook picks of the weekend. Still to come right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch this show as we are live here in the Matt Blatt Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Of course, you can comment on the show as well as you watching. Speaking of comments, a couple people have texted in. I don't want to neglect you guys, the listeners out there. I love getting your feedback on things. First of all, we just talked to Flyers with Kevin Durso. Nick from Brigantine chimes in on the text board at 609-403-0973. Nick says, Josh, the Flyers don't have a motivating captain. Also playing the same teams all year, starting off good and failing late. tells me that coaching did not adjust as well as Nick and Brigantine. Here's the problem, Nick. I'm in the camp where I blame the players way more than I blame the coaching. If you check out my article over at 973ESPN.com this week, I felt like the players extremely underachieved. You have guys like Giroux, guys like Voracek, guys like Kevin Hayes, who are all making a ton of money, all right? And they all were outplayed this year. JVR outperformed all three of those guys. Sean Couturier, the best two-way player on the team, I think should be the captain, honestly, at this point in time. I think that Giroux is a good but not a great player. And I think that when it comes to sports, your leaders have to step up. And I think that the lack of leadership in terms of what I saw on the ice, I saw poor defense, missed assignments. I saw guys who were not putting in the best effort, and it was very frustrating. So to me, when I look at the Flyers, I blame the players way more than I blame the coaches. And yes, playing the same teams again and again all year probably didn't help in terms of making the right adjustments. But at some point, the coach can only tell the player what to do. The player has to go out and do it. We blame the coaches so much for things when sometimes the players, there's many times that players make mistakes that have nothing to do with the coach at all. All right. It's not Doc Rivers' fault if Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid turn the ball over, right? It's not Alain Vigneault's fault when guys don't get back on defense or they completely miss an assignment and leaving the goaltender on a 1-on-0 fast break. That's not the head coach's fault. It's also not the head coach's fault when the GM gave him Eric Gustafson to replace Matt Niskanen. I mean, what a fail was that? So to me, when I look at the situation with the Flyers, I just turn around and say the players were bad. And if I were the Flyers, I think there needs to be a conversation to be had that Giroux shouldn't be the captain anymore. Listen, he's been a captain, and they've only been to the playoffs less than half the years he's been captain. And they've only gotten past the first round once. That's not a great leader. That's a guy that's just collecting a paycheck and stat compiling. He's not one of the greatest Flyers of all time. He just happened to play long enough to put up some nice stats. There is no reality where you're going to tell me that, for example, Claude Giroux is better than Brian Propp. That's a load of garbage. Just because he passed him on a couple Flyers all-time lists doesn't mean he's better than Propp. It means he played with the Flyers longer than Propp did. He's a stat compiler. He's like Drew Brees. That's not Drew, Drew Bledsoe, I should say. Not Drew Brees. Drew Brees is a Hall of Famer. Drew Bledsoe. Drew Bledsoe put up some gaudy stats in his career, but he's not a Hall of Famer. He's not an all-time great quarterback. He's just a guy who happened to play long enough to put up some nice stats. 609-403-0973. Doc from Dover says the Sixers want no parts of Jimmy Butler in the playoffs because of his chip on the shoulder. That's from Doc in Dover. Here's the problem, Doc. I think that the game on Thursday night is actually fool's gold for the Heat. I think that Doc Rivers purposely held back in what he was going to do. I think the Sixers did not put all their cards on the table. I think they held back and they wanted to see what the Heat were going to do because they knew the Heat were going to play hard. They were trying to make sure they didn't get in the play-in tournament. I think that, yes, Jimmy Butler can cause some problems for the Sixers, but the Sixers have a guy who can neutralize him a little bit, and that would be Danny Green. Danny Green is not good at chasing shooters. He's much better at handling guys who go one-on-one. And I think he can keep Butler in front of him a little better than some other teams can in the Eastern Conference. And I think that the difference between Danny Green and Ben Simmons will make it, and Matisse Thybulle will make a big difference on Jimmy Butler in the postseason. And don't overlook the fact that, to me, the bigger problem for the Sixers is not Jimmy. It's Bam Adebayo. I think Bam Adebayo is the one big man in the Eastern Conference that can make Joel Embiid work. And the Sixers have to figure out how to neutralize Bam, because Bam is an athletic freak. He's a very talented player. He is someone who will make you work for every single thing that you do, offensively and defensively. He's much more of a concern to me than Butler is for the Sixers. But I think that the Sixers can still beat them because, one, Sixers have more firepower. And number two, I think that Miami not having home court is going to matter. I think we overlook sometimes that when you think about who the Sixers have to play in the postseason, I think that the Heat, if you had to rank them, let's say the Bucks I see the Bucks are the number one challenge with the Sixers in the playoffs. I believe the Nets are number two because I still don't believe the Nets are where we hype them up to be because they have tonight's going to be their 8th game together, 8 games. And there's still no guarantee they're going to be healthy. Those guys get injured, it seems like every few weeks. They're a mash unit. And if Durant and Harden go cold, Kyrie ain't going to carry them. Kyrie's the third wheel on that team. Kyrie is the least important of those big three. And if Durant and Harden are not available, don't give their best effort, the Nets are toast. So to me, the Heat would be the third team on the Eastern Conference teams behind those two. And it's mostly because of the fact that I think the Heat are missing one major piece, and that is after Butler and Bam, who's the guy? Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson are very, very streaky. Trevor Ariza, nope. Andre Iguodala, he ain't that guy anymore. He's too old. Dragic, maybe. It's still going to be an interesting postseason, either way. All right. Keep the text coming, 609-403-0973. You get on the conversation. We're also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. If you want to join the conversation as well. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, UFC 262 is tonight. We'll get the preview with Brett Okamoto from ESPN. Their MMA reporter joins us at 1:20 tonight. Plus, I'll give you my thoughts on the latest with the Eagles and the NFL as well on the other side right here on Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Coming up on the next edition of the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Coming up Monday, will the Sixers be the number one seed? We'll have the answer. Plus, Phillies weekend down in Dunedin against the Blue Jays. We'll recap it all. Bob Wankel at 4:40. We'll go inside the Sixers with Paul Hudrick. Plus, Mike McGarry's back. And Jeff Kerr talks a little NFL at 5:25.
The Sports Bash, weekdays from 2 to 6 on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Mike Gill from the Sports Badge. If you're an advertising salesperson, how would you like to sell my show, the Sports Bash, here at 97.3 ESPN and Town Square Media? We're hiring new advertising salespeople to sell the Sports Bash, the #1 sports talk show in all of South Jersey at the #1 media company in South Jersey. Selling the Sports Bash is the job that will take you as far as you want to go. An excellent compensation package awaits you, as does a creative and fun working environment. So join the team on the Sports Bash and Town Square Media. It's truly the most advanced media company in all of South Jersey. Start or build upon your sales career by becoming a member of our team here at 97.3 ESPN and Town Square Media. If you're interested, apply at townsquaremedia.com. Click on careers. Town Square Media is an equal opportunity employer.
All of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
He is hit. He stumbles. He's down.
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City. This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Now, Sports Bash Saturday. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN. Glad to have you guys on board the show today. Everybody listening on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea City. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can watch the show. Yes, I'm live in the Matt Blatt Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up in about less than 20 minutes from now, we're getting the UFC 262 with ESPN MMA reporter Brett Okamoto. He's live down in Houston for the big event that will change the trajectory of the entire 155-pound division in the UFC tonight. The pay-per-view card is tonight. You can hear all the action right here. Of course, that ESPN Plus is where you get the pay-per-view if you decide to order it from home or wherever you decide to consume the product. Also, of course, tomorrow night, Sixers wrap up the season versus the Magic. They're Clint's #1 seed. We've talked a lot of Sixers and Flyers to open up the first hour of the show. You can keep the text coming at 609-403-0973, or you can comment on the web stream. For those of you watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, just like Alex White had to say on YouTube, Alex says, Josh, I think the week will be huge for us. I think the thing with the Sixers is, I asked Billy Schwein this question today on the locker room earlier. I asked this to Kevin McCormick last night on game night. To me, of the 4 teams that are in the play-in tournament, I think the Sixers can beat all of them, obviously. They're 11-1 against them this year. I think that we underrate the fact that you haven't had a break in a long time. So whoever they play, the Sixers are probably going to be the healthiest they've been the entire year. So Alex brings up a good point. For the Sixers, having an entire week to just sit back, kick back, maybe get a couple of light practices in, kind of maybe recalibrate, hit the reset button. It's going to help them a lot. And I think that that's another reason why having #1 seed support, because you're going to have home court advantage. You're going to have the Sixer fans screaming, 10,000 plus strong, going nuts. In a year, we haven't really had fans. I think the most fans Sixers had most of the year was 2,000 or 3,000. So now you're going to have 10,000. It's going to change the complete dynamic of a home court advantage, where the Sixers have been the best home court team in the NBA over the last few years. In fact, they've lost 11 games total the last 2 years at home. That's nuts. So I'm with you, Alex. I think that the rest is going to help them. I think that being the home court advantage is going to help them as well. And listen, I'm not afraid of the Celtics. They don't have a lot to offer. It's just Jason Tatum, Kemba, if he shows up, and what? Pritchard? I'm afraid of Pritchard? Is that who I'm afraid of? Come on. I mean, Marcus Smart's a very good player, but he's not changing a series as no Jaylen Brown in it. I think Charlotte's a fun story, but I think the Sixers can definitely handle them, what they bring to the table. I think Washington and the Pacers can push you a little bit because they have players who present specific matchup issues. The Pacers have Domantas Sabonis, and they have Malcolm Brogdon if he's healthy out there. And Karis LeVert has showed that he could be a scoring threat. They have some matchup intrigue for you. Meanwhile, the Wizards, I think if Bradley Beal is healthy, along with Russell Westbrook, who's been on fire, I think they can definitely be a thorn in your side for about 6 games. But I think either way, the Sixers beat them. And Alex is right. Having the rest will be huge for the 76ers. Great comment from Alex as he watches on YouTube. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Text board is open as well at 609-403-0973. I want to get to the Eagles in the NFL because, Nick Sirianni said something yesterday that I just can't get away from it. I can't escape it. So he spoke to the media yesterday, and no, he didn't say anything that was outlandish or wild or eye-popping or anything like that. But he said something about his perspective on the game that I think is a major positive for the Eagles. And it gets back to how the rest of the league is successful. Sirianni told the media that he has told his coaches, quote, "The coaches have heard me talk about fundamentals and technique a million times. I'm not going to stop either. I'm going to be relentless pit bull. A relentless pit bull," Sirianni says, about fundamentals and technique. That's what Sirianni said to the media yesterday. And I bring this up because I don't think that we appreciate the fact that you have a head coach here with the Eagles who, if this is that important to him, why is it important to him? Well, think about the 2 coaches that he has worked with most recently. Okay. When he was with the Colts, he was working with Frank Reich, and Frank Reich is a stickler for details. There's a reason why Frank Reich was one of the best backup quarterbacks of the last 30 years, because he had a great eye for detail. He was very keen on the fundamentals of the game. And when I think about that, I think about a guy who those small things matter to him. I don't think we can undersell the fact that Sirianni had some of Frank Reich rub off on him. Those eye for details, looking at the game, in a different light, shall we call it, than some other people do. And Sirianni was around him for 3 seasons. That's a lot of time for that kind of person to really have an impact on you. Then think about who he worked with before that. He was working under Mike McCoy. Now, Mike McCoy didn't have a lot of great success with the Chargers per se. But what he did have is an eye for detail. When Mike McCoy was, before he got the Denver job, when he was in Denver before he got the Chargers job, he was the Denver offensive coordinator. And when he was in Denver with Mike McCoy, he had to work with multiple different quarterbacks to be successful. And so when he got to the Chargers, he brought that background of understanding, all right, if I do this, this is successful. This is how I work with different players. This is how I work with different quarterbacks. This is how I work in different systems. And so you're going from a guy who in Denver had to find ways to make things work with different kinds of quarterbacks to going with only one quarterback and then looking to be successful with that one quarterback. And of course, again, he was with Peyton for his first year in Denver. So he worked with Peyton Manning. He made Tim Tebow successful on some level. And then he had Kyle Orton before that. So that eye for detail that he had in Denver, he brought with him to San Diego. And that's why they had the successful offense that they had. Now, the problem was their health and the defenses. But Sirianni had 2 different coaches who were very keen on the details of the game, rubbing off on him for basically a decade. And so, to me, when I look at what Sirianni is saying when he gets up there and says about the fundamentals and technique is that he's basically telling you, look, I'm telling you, the media, you may not want to hear this because it doesn't fit into maybe your byline or maybe whatever your editor told you to write about or what your program director thinks you should or shouldn't talk about. But I'm going to tell you right now, Sirianni's telling you why he got hired to be a head coach in this league. Because the Philadelphia Eagles wanted to get back to the basics. They want to get back to the fundamentals. They want to get back to technique. They want to get back to having a coach who runs a tighter ship than Doug Peterson did. There were a lot of rumors coming out of the NovaCare complex over the last couple of years that Doug Peterson was nowhere as on top of players as you would have thought he was. Players were late for meetings all the time. They would delay practices. They would delay other things. They waited for players to show up and be ready. There was a lot of conjecture that Doug was so much of a player's coach that he kind of let the guys have the run of the place. And I don't think Sirianni is going to come in with an iron fist, but who are the best coaches in the league? Bill Belichick. All right. Andy Reid. There's another one. Bruce Arians. Another one. Who are there some great coaches in the league that people respect? Kyle Shanahan. Sean McVay. What do all five of those coaches have in common? They are sticklers for the details. They are very, very hyper-focused on structure, on fundamentals, on technique, on being students of the game. Doug Peterson, for as great of a leader that he was, and as much of a knowledgeable person he was when it came to the game of football, I don't think he was as good at being a fundamentals guy as we maybe thought he was. I think that there's a possibility that the Eagles wanted somebody to come in here who was different than what Doug Peterson brought to the table. So when I look at the Philadelphia Eagles with Sirianni, it sounds like to me, listening to Sirianni talk the last couple of times, now he's gotten more comfortable in front of the media, there's a possibility that Sirianni is one of these guys who is more like the other great coaches in this league, where he says, I care about the fundamentals. I care about the basics of the game. I care about being on time. I care about having a hyper structure, not being a tyrant, not being crazy about stuff, but there's a way to do things where you can let the players be themselves, but also hold them accountable. Again, Andy Reid in Kansas City, Kyle Shanahan with the 49ers, Sean McVay with the Rams. These are three very different human beings, but they all care about the fundamentals of the game. They care about structure. They care about the technique. They care about the small things, and they put it all together. Kyle Dubray, watching over there on YouTube at 973 ESPN, brings up Mike Tomlin. That's a great example. Tomlin is a structure coach. He is a guy who cares about the fundamentals of the game. He cares about doing things the right way, but Tomlin still lets the players be themselves. He lets the guys have a personality. He never held back Antonio Brown. He never held back Ben Roethlisberger. He never held back Le'Veon Bell. He never held back Troy Polamalu from being themselves. He just wanted them to be themselves within the structure and the fundamentals of the game. So to me, Doug Peterson isn't here anymore, is less about Doug Peterson going 4-11 and 4-11-1? Yeah, 4-11-1. Than it was about the fact that the 4-11-1 went in line with the fact that maybe Doug wasn't as great of a fundamentals coach as we thought, and the Eagles were looking for somebody to take his place that fit more in line with the Kyle Shanahans, the Sean McVays, the Andy Reids, the Mike Tomlins, the Bruce Arians of the league than, let's say, Pete Carroll. Yeah, maybe Doug took the Pete Carroll concept a little too far. being the rah-rah leadership guy, being a player's coach, maybe being a little, fast and loose with certain details. And listen, Pete Carroll hasn't gotten back to the Super Bowl in a few years. And part of it is because the organization hasn't put in the best players in the field, but part of it might be because Pete Carroll's message might grow old. If Pete Carroll's going to have that, for the job for life, basically, as long as he keeps winning, 9 to 10 games a year. But for the Eagles, Doug Peterson went to 3 straight playoff appearances and won a Super Bowl. On the back end of those 3 seasons, the first and last year, he had losing records. Has to make you wonder, is Nick Sirianni more in line with what the successful coaches in this league do than Doug Peterson was? Josh Hennig, Sports Bash Saturday here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, the text board is open at 609-403-0973. You also comment as we watch on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I'll get to your guys' comments a little bit later in the hour, but I got to get to the break because coming up next, we got to preview UFC 262. ESPN MMA reporter Brett Okamoto joins me coming up next. The future of the lightweight division is on the line tonight. Find out why next here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
This weekend on Major League Baseball on ESPN Radio.
Ground ball hit to third, knocked down by Arenado, stands up, recovers, throws to first in time. What a play!
The National League Central leading St. Louis Cardinals head to San Diego to face the Padres.
Swing and a fly ball crushed to right field. A game-tying solo home run for Eric Hosmer.
Listen to Major League Baseball tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 8 p.m.
When you support your local small businesses, it helps keep your neighbors employed, helps kids save for college, and strengthens your community. And Town Square Media South Jersey puts local businesses in the spotlight.
Ambient Comfort Heating and Cooling Professionals. AmbientComfortNJ.com.
Filling Marble and Tile Outlet, Philadelphia Avenue and Route 30 in Egg Harbor City. FillingMarble.com.
Dennisville Fence, serving you since 1952. Be the envy of your neighborhood.
Comfort Now by Bob McAllister. Improve the comfort in your home. Call 609-400-1005 and ask about discounts and rebate incentives. Visit iwantcomfortnow.com.
East Coast Roofing, Siding and Windows. Services all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up. Call East Coast today at 609-646-1444. Online at eastcoastroofing.com.
Thank you for supporting your local businesses. From Town Square Media South Jersey.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig back here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get back to your thoughts and comments at 609-403-0973 on the text board in just a bit. We're also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show each and every week here on 97.3 ESPN. Joining us right now on the Boardwalk kind of hotline, UFC 262 tonight, exclusively on UFC 62 on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. Brett Okamoto, ESPN MMA reporter, live from Houston, joins us right now to get more into a card that will change the future of the 155-pound division. Brett, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. It feels good to be back, in a different city other than Las Vegas covering a fight. It feels like it's a little bit back to normal here.
Yeah, a little bit back to normal. Every little bit counts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I haven't minded it. I live in Vegas, so a lot of these have been a home game for me. But yeah, it feels nice to get out and see some fans and have events around the country again.
Absolutely. So, to me, Brett, I thought one of the things that you brought up, and I forget which broadcast it was, but you brought up an excellent point this week talking about this title fight tonight that I thought is so poignant, and that is about the fact that, the two guys who are fighting never fought Nurmagomedov. And it feels like that the Khabib era of being the 155-pound champion kind of bridged the gap between basically two different almost generations and types of fighters. And now you have two guys who have no direct connections to him who are going to be a part of the future of the lightweight division in the UFC.
Yeah, I think the UFC took a look at that, when it was looking on what to do with this lightweight division. When you have a champion as dominant and quite frankly as kind of as beloved as Khabib was, it's going to be difficult to move past that era, especially because he didn't just beat guys, he absolutely dominated them. I mean, he was undefeated, of course, but the manner in which he was beating those guys, those fights weren't even close. So if you're the fight promotion, you're thinking to yourself, the challenge that we have is getting people to get on board and believe in this idea that, hey, this is the best lightweight in the world. I mean, forget about Khabib. He's retired. He's out of the sport. Everything he did was amazing, but now this is the best lightweight in the world. I think that they were aware that was going to be a challenge. So by putting in two guys, Charles Oliveira has a lot of experience in the UFC. Of course, it's going to be his 28th fight in the UFC. And then Michael Chandler, a champion in another promotion. I think that they're kind of able to say, hey, this is the ushering in of a new era. You're not seeing Dustin Poirier, who lost to Khabib, fight Justin Gaethje, who lost to Khabib. You're seeing two brand new guys to kind of kick off this era.
These two guys also got to this point very different ways. Charles Oliveira is basically a guy who grew up in the UFC. He's been fighting in the UFC for basically over a decade at this point. And this is a guy who his fight win streak is not just some run-of-the-mill win streak, Brett. I mean, folks don't know. I mean, this guy is finishing people at an astronomical rate.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of the most dynamic guys to watch in the sport right now. Just in terms of, he always had the submission ability. I mean, this guy pulls off submissions that you learn about as he does them because you've never seen them before. I mean, that's the level of talent that this guy has, and he doesn't need a traditional takedown. Go for a single leg and drag you to the ground. He can jump on your back when you're standing there along the fence. I mean, he is that dangerous with his submissions. But over the last couple of years, he's added a lot of striking to that, and his striking style is very, very fun to watch because he's basically just ultra aggressive. And the reason he's able to do that is because he doesn't care if he puts himself in a bad position and gets taken down because he wants to be on the floor anyway. So anybody who's kind of seeing Charles for the first time, hopefully, you're going to get a heavy dose of highlights from the UFC leading up to the fight. and just know, man, that this guy is a finisher. I don't think either way, whether Charles wins or loses tonight, I don't think this fight's going to go full 5 rounds. I think we're going to see a finish for our first vacant lightweight title fight after Khabib.
And of course, part of that also is the guy on the other side, which is Michael Chandler, the former Bellator lightweight championship. And for a lot of UFC people, he's new to them, but he's no new guy to the MMA world. This guy has been arguably one of the best lightweights on the planet for a decade, and now he gets a chance to test his mettle for UFC gold.
Yeah, and he always thought that he was there, you know, and the rest of us kind of thought, well, maybe he's there, but it's difficult to tell, you know. But I think after he came out, and first of all, I mean, he had an amazing debut in January. He beat Dan Hooker, knocked him out, made quick work of him. But I also think that Michael Chandler's sort of confidence and his willingness to take virtually any kind of opportunity the UFC is throwing at him is winning fans over. You know, I mean, clearly this guy believes in himself. You can see it in his interviews, but you can also see it in his actions. I mean, he was ready to be a backup in a world title fight, you know, in his first performance in the UFC. He said yes to fights against Tony Ferguson. He said yes to fights against Dustin Poirier. Like he's eager for these fights because he's been waiting for the opportunity to test himself against these guys. So that type of confidence, I mean, it really is a weapon for Michael Chandler. And I think people are really starting to see it now, is that, hey, man, maybe I should believe in this guy, because clearly this guy completely believes that he's the best lightweight in the world.
Also, Chandler and Oliveira, they're both guys who finish a lot of fights, so we expect a lot of fireworks tonight. What is the biggest thing going into this fight that maybe people are not talking about, Chandler versus Oliveira, that you think needs to be talked about more?
You know, I think we've hit sort of the main storylines here. You know, I mean, obviously Khabib stepping away and this being a new era, that's sort of kind of hovering over all of it. But I think that the sport has kind of agreed to move on from Khabib. You know, I think it was obviously jarring back in October when he stepped away, and it was sad, and it was sad for the reasons that he walked away, and it was sad because he was in his prime, and you just wanted to see a brilliant guy like that compete. But I think now, you know, there's been some time. Dana White was sort of saying, hey, maybe he'll stick around. And I think we've all kind of now reached this point where I think the sport's ready to move on. I think the sport is excited about this lightweight fight. I think it's excited about how Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier fit in July. It's excited how Justin Gaethje still fits in. So I guess if there's anything else to talk about, it's just that this is one domino of a lot of dominoes that's going to fall at 155 for the rest of the year. I mean, the next 7 months of this year, this 2021 calendar year, is going to be very, very dynamic and very telling in what the future is going to look like at 155 pounds.
ESPN MMA reporter Brett Okamoto joining us here on the Boardwalk kind of hotline here on Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN. UFC 262 tonight exclusively on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. You should already have ESPN Plus if you love sports, but either way, you can get it tonight. Watch the fights from the comfort of your home or wherever you're going to be at. Brett, when you think about, you mentioned in the lightweight division, the co-main event is part of that future, because you have two guys coming in this from very different perspectives. Tony Ferguson, the longtime contender at lightweight, versus a guy who I think a lot of people might not know about, but after tonight, they may know a lot about.
Yeah, it's a huge fight in the co-main event. And, you know, I'm sitting here talking about the future of the lightweight division, and I mentioned Justin Gaethje and Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, and I don't mention Tony Ferguson. And that's something that we never would have thought of, you know, a year ago. I mean, Tony Ferguson had been arguably the best lightweight, you know, for a long time, and just never got his chance to fight Khabib because that fight continued to fall through for a variety of reasons. But it's easy to forget about Tony Ferguson right now, coming off of the year that he had in 2020. I mean, he lost badly to Justin Gaethje, and then he lost badly to Charles Oliveira. And the thing that was sort of made it even worse is that he lost in two very, very different ways. It wasn't as if, you know, we found some kind of hole in Tony's game that he's got to fix a little bit. He was badly outstruck on the feet by Gaethje, and then badly out wrestled by Oliveira. So we've now seen him lose in dominant fashion in two very different ways, you know, twice in a row. And he's getting up there in age. We know that he's been through a lot of wars in his career. And so the question is, you know, has all of that finally caught up to Tony Ferguson? Tony Ferguson has made a career over being just a sort of tougher guy in the octagon. I mean, you could look at his record and say sometimes he's beat guys where those fights, man, if he wouldn't have been able to just kind of outlast them and kind of grinded it out, he was very close to losing a lot of those fights that he won during that 12-fight win streak. So as you start to get older and those miles accumulate, you know, can you fight with that style? And he said that he's gonna bring a different style. With Freddie Roach in his corner, he's gonna act a little bit more defensively. this is a big test, big crossroads for Tony Ferguson, because Beneil Dariush is good everywhere. And if Tony has not fixed some things that went wrong last year, Beneil's going to expose him again, and then he's going to be in a real problem. Then people are really going to be off of the Tony Ferguson bandwagon and say, hey, maybe this guy's towards the end of his career even, let alone being in the top of the division.
You know, you mentioned Freddie Roach being in his corner, and I remember, I think it was Tyron Woodley talking about this on ESPN Plus, about the fact that, you know, Freddie probably sees things in the MMA stand-up game that he can help Tony with because of all of his years in boxing and seeing Tony for as long as he has. You know, what are some of the things that you think Tony can improve on that will keep him from getting into a bad situation with Beneil Dariush?
Well, I think first off, some of it is just a little bit of a mindset. And, you know, Tony has talked about this week, is that, you know, the guy is just so confident that he knows what's best, that he's confident that he has a very high fight IQ. He's confident that he has one of the better minds in the sport when it comes to strategy. And so he kind of was not listening to anybody, you know, over the last brush of his career. And sometimes it's, especially in the last two losses that he had, it didn't really, you couldn't tell what Tony Ferguson's game plan was, you know? And I think by getting a veteran mind and a really well-respected guy, obviously in Freddie Roach, how much is he going technique-wise to change in Tony's game? I tend to think not a whole lot, you know, and unless Tony has really been spending a whole lot of time with him every day and they've been focusing on hyper-focused on certain different things. I think it's just going to be little type nuances. And overall, it's kind of the bigger off mindset where it's like, hey, you don't need to be willing to take two punches to land one. You don't need to be in these brawls every single time. You know, there's a way to maintain your fighting style, but not get hit as much. And I do know that is one thing that Tony wanted to do. We'll see if Freddie Roach was able to implement some of it, but he doesn't want to get hit as much. He said he put his family through a lot. You know, obviously they don't want to see him in the hospital after every single fight, especially after that Gaethje fight. He got real beat up. So we'll see if his striking defense has improved tonight at UFC 262.
ESPN MMA reporter Brett Okamoto live from Houston for UFC 262 tonight, exclusively on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. Of course, the lightweight championship of the world is on the line. Co-main event is Ferguson versus Dariush. But another fight on the card that I want to touch on with you, Brett, before I let you go, local fighter in this area, Caitlin Chukagian, at it again, women's flyweight contender for a while now. A tough fight against tonight, but where does her career go from here? Because, you know, Shevchenko, she is not giving up that belt anytime soon. And you got to have to wonder, what is Caitlin's future if she keeps winning? Is she just going to be kind of stuck at this certain spot, or what are her options moving forward?
Yeah, I think so. She kind of almost reminds me of like a Joseph Benavidez situation where, you know, Joe for a very long time at 125 pounds in the men's division, you know, he was looked at as, man, this guy can beat everyone in the division but the champion. And Caitlin's sort of starting to hit that mark, even though she did lose to Jessica Andrade. But she continues to win unless it's, you know, right there for a title fight, essentially. You know, I talked to Caitlin about this not recently, but last year, and I think that she's kind of okay with that. I don't think she really thinks that she's going to be fighting for too many more years. I know that she wants to start a family. There's other things that she wants to do with her life. So I think that's one of the reasons why you've seen her so active, is that she, as long as she is still competing, she wants to take fights on a regular basis. And hey, man, who knows? I mean, if she continues to win them and they throw her a title fight, of course, you know, she's going to take it. And then if she comes up short against Valentina again, I could see that potentially being the end of her career. But I think Caitlin has been able to remove a lot of pressure from her shoulders, because she's like, hey, I'm on borrowed time. I don't want to spend too many more years in this sport. I'm just going to fight as frequently as I can and have fun. And her performances are very smooth and not much pressure on her shoulders right now. So I'm expecting her to look good tonight against Vivi Araujo.
UFC 262 tonight is on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. The lightweight championship of the world is on the line. You know, Brett, you mentioned, before I let you go, you mentioned how Caitlin wants to start a family. We're now seeing Miesha Tate come back after starting her own family. It's a very different side of the paradigm that we haven't seen before. I want to ask you about that because, you know, traditionally in the past, you know, women's MMA has really only been on this level in the UFC for a short amount of time, barely even a decade. And Miesha will basically be one of the handful of women who's actually had a child, started a family, and wanted to come back. What do you think about that dynamic?
Oh, I mean, I think the sport obviously welcomes Miesha Tate back. I don't know if any of us were really sitting around thinking that she was going to return. She seemed very, very, when she did walk away, it seemed like she was very comfortable with that decision. She had won a championship in the UFC. She had been involved in some of the biggest fights in women's history. And I think that she was tired of just that grind, and the damage that comes along with this sport. Sometimes we can't take that for granted. This is a difficult sport to be in. But, once you have, she had children, so she stepped away from the sport, had a very good long break. And then sometimes, that absence makes the fire come back. I always kind of tend to think that a fighter, once they've walked away, they come back. Expectations are not always super high because this is just a tough sport to walk away from and then come back to. But from the perspective of a woman, if she did what she wanted to do in terms of starting a family, now she has that. She's always going to have that. She wants to come back to the sport. I think that there's certainly space here for her. I mean, her name recognition alone, she's going to get some opportunities. If she wins a couple fights, she'll be right there in terms of big matchups.
He is Brett Okamoto. Follow him on Twitter at BOkamoto ESPN. ESPN MMA reporter down in Houston for UFC 262 tonight. ESPN Plus exclusively where you can watch the pay-per-view. And as all guests, he appeared here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Brett, always appreciate the insights and enjoy the fights tonight.
My pleasure, man. You too.
Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, UFC 262 is going to be a lot of fun. I am so looking forward to this card. I mean, you're literally seeing a changing of the guard at 155 pounds. It's going to be a fascinating set of fights to watch. I will give you my picks for the fights as well as what you can do with my promo code Hennig at FanDuel Sportsbook to get in on all the action for the fights tonight. Of course, we'll give you that to next, as well as your thoughts and comments at 609-403-0973 is text for LC comments over on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We'll get to your guys' comments as well on the other side as we wrap up the final segment of the show right here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City, and we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Just follow 97.3 ESPN to watch the Sports Bash with Mike Gill, Game Night with yours truly, Josh Hennig, Monday through Friday, as well as the Locker Room with Billy Schweim, Saturdays and Sundays, 10 a.m. to noon.
It's Sixers basketball tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
And he jammed it! A block at one end, a Euro step, and a slam at the other.
The Sixers host the Orlando Magic tomorrow. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN.
Attention, New Jersey. Matt Blatt Nissan needs to replenish their pre-owned inventory. They will buy your vehicle for cash today. You heard right. Matt Blatt Nissan will buy your current vehicle for cash or trade it for top dollar and put zero down payment, pay 0% interest, and get $2,500 off MSRP on every 2021 Nissan Murano in stock.
It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
All new loaded SV model 2021 Nissan Rogue. Lease just $239 per month with zero security deposit. Plus our fast track checkout. Bring any vehicle and Matt Blatt Nissan will buy it for cash or pay top dollar for any trade in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot or online at mattblattnissan.com. Dated equity will be refinanced into new vehicle. With qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% APR financing based on 1667 per thousand borrowed. Offers can be combined. Murano VIN MC 101371. Rogue VIN MW 011224. 36 months, 10,000 miles for your lease. Lease selling price $28,590. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattnissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 5/31/21. It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
Why would someone looking for a mortgage at the Jersey Shore take a loan from a company in Detroit or North Carolina or some other far-off place? Online mortgages promise a lot, but don't always deliver. First Bank of Sea Isle City knows the Jersey Shore. We are local lenders. We use local appraisers and provide in-house processing. We understand the unique obstacles of financing in Cape May County. Don't take a chance. Local banking is better. Let us guide you. First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Welcome back in. Josh Hennig here. Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN, live on your radio on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show. Just follow 97.3 ESPN on all social media platforms. We'll get to my FanDuel Sportsbook picks tonight in just a moment, but as promised, I always like to get your guys' comments as well throughout the show. Love to hear from you folks out there, your comments, what we've been talking about. We've talked about a lot today. Sixers, we've talked Eagles, we've talked Flyers, we've talked UFC 262. A lot to get to, so we'll get to some of your comments right now. Let's go to Kyle Dubray first over on the YouTube channel. Kyle says about the Eagles won that Super Bowl partly because they signed Chris Long and LeGarrette Blount coming from the Patriots championships. Well, that's true. It's been outlined by a lot of people who cover the team that the influence of Chris Long and LeGarrette Blount in that Eagles locker room was a big part of the Eagles' success last year. So that year they won the Super Bowl. So you could point to their leadership, them bringing that culture into the Eagles locker room. And you could argue that when they left the Eagles locker room, that kind of changed a lot of people's attitudes. Maybe they got a little less responsible. No Malcolm Jenkins anymore, no more Chris Long, no more of those veterans who were really the stalwarts, the leadership in the Eagles locker room. Maybe the players weren't holding themselves accountable as much anymore. So you could argue that they were so integral in the leadership that when they left, Doug Peterson lost the guys who were helping keep the players accountable. And that's when things went sideways. It's definitely something to think about. Speaking of the Eagles, 609-403-0973. Tom from the Villa says, I'm excited about this season. New faces on the field makes for good times. I will miss Doug, though. I'm glad the fans will be back. Had a hard time watching games with no fans. That's Tom from the Villas. Tom, it was definitely an adjustment. For me, I just love football so much that for me, it didn't matter. You know what I mean? Whether the fans were there or not there. The thing that bothered me, though, was, and you brought this up as well about the fake crowd noise in your text. I hated the fake crowd noise, honestly. I felt that the way some of the teams handled it was really cheap and hokey. So I'm glad to hear real fans. And it sounds way different. When you heard those Green Bay Packer playoff games, and those Cleveland playoff games with only a few thousand people in the stands compared to the fake crowd noise, it was a massive difference. It's like, for as far as technology has come, video games still look like video games. They look better than they used to. They're less pixelated, but there are some obvious differences between players in a video game and players on a court. So it's the same thing with the audio. The audio is just not the same without the fans in the stands. So I agree with that 100%. And you should be excited about the season. Look, you got Devonta Smith out there. You have a new head coach. You have a new offense. You have a new defense coming in here with Jonathan Gannon's scheme. So a lot of change for the Eagles. So you should be excited. I'm glad to hear you're excited because you know what? There's a lot to be excited about. Fans are back in the stands. A young quarterback under center in Jalen Hurts. Let's see what he has to offer. And guess what? No matter what happens this year, you potentially have 3 first-round picks next year. So if things go sideways this year on any aspect of the sport, you can just go in the draft and go nuts. You can use all 3 of those picks, or you can trade those picks. Listen, if Jalen Hurts plays well this year and he solidifies himself as the team's quarterback, I would be surprised if the Eagles package all of their first and second round picks, or at least most of their first, second round picks, to move up to get a guy like an elite pass rusher, like a Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon, or somebody who's going to be an impact player on the defensive side of the ball, because it's kind of what they're still missing. All the other teams in a division have elite pass rushers on some level, or they have something defensively that stands out. Even the Giants upgraded their defense on multiple aspects. And the Eagles, they're getting older. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, they're not getting any younger. And Javon Hargrave and Derek Barnett, they're nice players, but I don't know how great they are. So, depending on how this season goes, you might look into the draft next year and just go, get more blue chip talent, and you could see this team kind of rebuild itself in the next few years. That's from the text board. Tom from the Villa, 609-403-0973. We'll get back to YouTube right now at 973 ESPN YouTube. Rodney Johnson says it's looking like it'll be the Wizards in the 8 seed after the play-in. They might take a game or two with their scoring, which is third in the league. Yeah, I think that the Wizards are going to have the 8 or 7 seed. I think there's a possibility the Wizards can play themselves actually into the 7 seed. I know that there's a bit of an outside possibility, but listen, I think whoever gets them, whether it's the Sixers or the Nets or the Bucks or whoever has to face the Wizards in the first round, it's going to be a thorn in their side. I think that Russell Westbrook is on fire right now. I think that when you look at if Bradley Beal can come back, it's a major option. They can steal a game or two. Look, I think it would go like this. If it's the Sixers versus Wizards, I feel the Sixers will win the first 2 games. The Wizards would win the 3rd game. Sixers will win the 4. And then game 5 is a coin flip. And then the Sixers would at worst finish in 5 or 6. But I could definitely see them losing the first game on the road against a team like the Wizards for sure, because I think Russell Westbrook right now is proving that he is not a one-hit wonder. He's not a one-trick pony. He's a force of nature to be reckoned with and to be respected. So I think that personally, I would love to see the Wizards versus the Nets. That's the matchup I want. I want Westbrook looking across the court at Durant and Harden and saying, you guys didn't want to play with me anymore. I'm going to hurt you. And if that's the case, an extra motivated Westbrook could be super dangerous for the Nets. He might wear them down for the second round, and then the Bucks would knock him out in the second round. I mean, that would be hilarious, but that could definitely happen. I think Westbrook plays his best when he's angry, and I would love to see him play the Nets in a 7-game series. I think that would go 6-7 games because the Nets can't stop anybody. Their defense is horrible. You mentioned, Rodney, that the Wizards are 3rd in the league in scoring. What are the Nets going to do? Who's going to stop Westbrook? I mean, Kyrie's just going to do the Olay like the Matadors with the Bulls, for goodness sake. That's what it's going to be all night long. And then Bradley Beal, I mean, Harden can try to slow him down, but Bradley is a phenomenal scorer as well. So, and you know what? The Wizards have some talent. They have some nice young players. So I don't think they could beat the Sixers all, but I think they could definitely give the Nets a run for their money. All right, let's get one more comment here. Kyle on YouTube says, where do you think the Sixers stack up against the West? That's a great question, because I think that the way I would stack up in the West right now, I think that a team like the Clippers would be a huge problem for the Sixers. I think Rondo would cause a lot of problems for the Sixers in the backcourt. I think Paul George and Kawhi, if they can get on the same page, can be very, very potent. I think that you got Morris out there. He would love to play Philadelphia in the NBA Finals, being a Philly guy himself. So I think that the Clippers create a lot of matchup problems. Obviously, the Lakers have LeBron and Anthony Davis. They also have Montrezl Harrell and Dennis Schroeder. And if those guys are on their P's and Q's, I think that they would cause the Sixers a lot of problems as well, especially Schroeder. And of course, Ben Simmons versus LeBron, that would be great television. Joel Embiid versus Anthony Davis, that would be great television. I think if you're asking the league, that would be one of their most coveted finals matchups, would be Sixers-Lakers. As far as the rest of the West, I think the Suns are very interesting. I won't let go of that. I think that the Chris Paul factor in Phoenix has really elevated that franchise. I don't think they're an NBA Finals team, but I think that they could definitely go far in the postseason. I think the Jazz are an outside dark horse, even though they're the number 1 seed. I think they're a bit of a I think that they're a bit of a team that can be exposed, because Gobert is not an offensive player per se. And I think that going against teams like the Clippers and the Lakers in a 7-game series could really expose the weaknesses the Jazz have in the post, in terms of them not being able to really work the ball well offensively in and out of the post. It's mostly a perimeter team offensively. Gobert's great defensively in the post, but he can't guard the perimeter. So, and I don't really see a guy like Bogdanovich or Joe Ingles being some great perimeter defender. Yeah, Mike Conley can neutralize a guy like Dennis Schroeder or slow down a Chris Paul, but what about the rest of the teams? So, and then the Nuggets, I think the Nuggets are just dead in the water without Jamal Murray in the postseason. I just don't think they can go too far deep of a run. So that's kind of how I lay out the Western Conference at this point. So I think that all the matchups would be interesting, and I'm looking forward to what the playoffs hold in store. NBA playoffs start next weekend. You hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. We will also have the play-in tournament this upcoming week, so keep it tuned to 97.3 ESPN FM. All right, as promised, my FanDuel Sportsbook picks of the weekend. Don't forget FanDuel Sportsbook. They are letting you place your first bet risk-free right now. New users get up to $1,000 back in site credit if your first bet doesn't win. America's number one sportsbook is FanDuel Sportsbook. They've got great odds on all different betting markets with unique and fun bet types like same-game parlays and always-on promotions to let you get more action out of every game day. So just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app, sign with my promo code Hennig to get on all the action. Your first bet risk-free up to $1,000. That's promo code Hennig with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or to play in President and NJRPA. First online real money wager. Only for risk-free bet. Refund issues, non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Restrictions apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, got that out of my system there. Let's just get you all set up for the back end of the show here. So, UFC 262. I got a couple ideas for you guys. First of all, I think that the Barboza-Burgos fight, the beginning of the main card, as well as Ferguson, Darush, and Oliveira Chandler all do not go the distance. That's a three-way parlay at plus 411. So $10 would get you back $41 plus. So you could use that risk-free bet up to $1,000 if you want to do that. Also, there is UFC parlay insurance. Just sign with promo code Hennig, and you can get in on all of this with FanDuel Sportsbook. So we got a three-way parlay where Oliveira Chandler, Darush Ferguson, and Barboza Burgos all don't finish, right? So let's go with the rest of a couple other fights. I think Caitlin Chukagian wins tonight. I think it's an interesting fight, but I think she pulls off the fight. So that's your fourth on that parlay. The fifth fight to make your parlay go for UFC 262 tonight is the quote-unquote main event of the undercard. That would be Jacare Souza versus Muniz. I think Jacare wins the fight. I just think he's the better fighter. So you can go Jacare, Caitlin Chukagian, and then the other three fights to all not go the distance. $10 nets you $146. So overall, here's how I see the card playing out. I'm all in on Michael Chandler winning the championship. He is a plus 114 underdog. I think that he wins the fight. I think Ferguson gets back on track. I think that Beneil Dariush is a phenomenal fighter, an amazing story. If you don't know his story, go check out ESPN Plus's documentary about him and his background, being an immigrant from Iran, coming to America and all that. But, it's I think Tony figures it out. I think that the change in the coaching is a big deal. I think Chanel beats Rogerio, but Torin, I just think Chanel offers too much. Caitlin Chukagian, I think she wins. And my other big thing is, this Barboza Shane Burgos fight is a coin flip, okay? And I want to see Barboza fight, but I think Burgos wins. But the bigger deal is, will this fight go the distance? If you say no, it's plus 112 odds. So some interesting values for UFC 262 tonight. I'll be locked in. Listen, there's no Sixers. There's no Flyers tonight. There's only a Phillies game. So you got the UFC fights, you got the Phillies games, you got the finishing up of the NBA regular season. Now the playoff season is going to pan out, gets locked up a lot tonight. Of course, next week, the NBA play-in tournament. And then next weekend, the NBA playoffs are here. We have all the action coverage right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Thanks to Kevin Durso and Brett Okamoto for joining the show today. I'll be back in on Monday at 6 p.m. for Game Night with Josh Hennig, following the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. Tomorrow, Billy Schweim and the Locker Room from 10 a.m. to noon. 76ers, final game of the season versus the Magic at 7 p.m. hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Thanks everybody who watched and commented on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as well. I'm Josh Hennig. Have a great weekend. I'll catch you on Monday. One of the things I love about betting basketball is I'm always finding new player props and game props that I like. And what's cool about FanDuel Sportsbook is you can combine these props with other bets from the same game to score an even bigger payout. It's called a same game parlay bet, and you can only find them on FanDuel Sportsbook. Same game parlays are just one reason why I use FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. If you haven't tried FanDuel Sportsbook yet, new users get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. Just place a bet, and FanDuel will refund you up to $1,000 back in site credit if you don't win. So download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today and use my promo code Hennig when you sign up to get your first bet risk-free. That's promo code Hennig on FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or to play and present in NJRPA. First online real money wager only for risk-free bet. Refund issued is non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Restrictions apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
When it comes to wings in the Delaware Valley, nobody beats the Piccalilli Inn. Enjoy ice-cold beer and their world-famous wings, tails, or ears on the Pic patio. Try new flavors like garlic parmesan, Jim Beam maple, or smoker. You'll see why people drive from all over for the Pic's world-famous wings and home-style favorites. Whether you're headed to or from the shore for eat-in or take-out, make tonight the night. You visit the one, the only, the original Piccalilli Inn, Route 206, Chemung, New Jersey. For live music and specials, like them on Facebook.